Cinemajaw is sponsored by Overcast, an independent podcast app that embraces the open world of podcasting instead of locking it down. No exclusives, no premium content, no paywalls. Just a great podcast app for everyone. Get it for free in the App Store. And we thank them for their support. You're listening to Cinemajaw, the greatest movies podcast ever, recorded on location from our respective homes in Chicago. My name is Matt Kay, and with me is
Rye the Movie Guy, and sitting alongside us is Phil Me and Phil.
How are we doing tonight, boys?
This week on Cinemajaw, Matt, we continue our celebration of the great holiday known as Halloween.
Yeah.
As we cover our top 5 scariest movies of the 1990s.
You know, it's funny. We had a little discussion behind the scenes, and you said, Matt, these are your movies, and you're right. But I tried to dig up some that I haven't spoke about too much. We'll see how well I did with that.
Yeah, I just know that when I was doing the research for these, the 90s were our bread and butter of going to see a lot of these films.
Right.
So you being a horror guy and it being the 90s when we were seeing a lot of these films, I just saw a lot of the ones that come up on your list. Not even when we're talking horror, but for various other reasons, these are your movies.
Right. Yeah. We were in our teens and early 20s in the 90s, and that's like, you know, prime time horror movie watching, you know, when you're growing up. So, yeah.
Yep. To cover a hefty list like this, I mean, this is a big list. Top 5 scariest movies of the 90s. You need a great guest.
Yeah, we have horror expert, friend of the show, Elliott Bambrough, back in the house, and I can't wait to talk to Elliott again.
I agree. It was funny. The first time we ever had Elliott on, it was for nothing that had to do with horror. And when the show ended, he said, you know, I'm a horror guy. I need to be back on the Halloween episodes. And ever since then, we're starting a new tradition of having Elliott on.
Yeah, I like this tradition. And, you know, it's funny because a lot of people say that they're horror experts and then, you know, they're not. But Elliott brings it. He really knows his stuff. Terrifier. Whew. He recommended that movie.
He watches Shudder 24. He doesn't just get it in October. He's got Shudder going every month of the year.
Right. And I started to say he recommended Terrifier to me last year. And I finally watched it actually pretty recently, like a couple months ago. It delivered. All right, we'll talk to him about that, though.
Can't wait. Besides that, we have more going on, don't we, Phil?
Oh, yeah, it's still Wes Anderson month, so we got a new clip and a new fact.
Not to mention a huge review. We are covering Dune, probably the most anticipated film of the decade.
Well, wow, the decade. He always goes big.
Maybe.
I don't know. This is why we get complaints, man.
I mean, there's Dune
way too
and
big.
Ghostbusters Afterlife, right? What else you got?
But you're talking the decade here. Jesus,
There
man,
was a Star Wars movie this decade, you putz.
Yeah, well,
Slow
all
it
right.
down.
It's like Endgame came out 2 years ago or something.
Yeah, but this is
my
Dune,
goodness.
Phil. This is Dune.
Well, we will be talking about Dune. Plus, Matt, in honor of horror movie season here, looking at the lists, 80s that we've been doing, the 70s, it got me thinking, there's a lot of famous actors that actually appeared in horror movies early on in their career. I thought that would be a fun trivia topic. So you are taking Elliott on in famous actors in horror movies.
Okay. All right. The gears are actually turning. And I say that from time to time, but they actually are this time.
They squeak and they move slowly, but they're moving.
Got to squirt some WD-40 up my nose.
The other interesting thing that happened when looking at the 70s, 80s, and now 90s, 3 weeks in a row here, is you see so many great directors, horror directors, that have sort of taken over the mantle. They're really exciting at their time. And who's that guy today? I think we would all agree there's only one name that you would say, yes, this is the most exciting horror director going right now.
Totally agree.
And that's James Wan.
Peele. No, Jordan Peele.
No, my friend. It's James
Peele.
Wan. There's no doubt. I like Jordan Peele, but James Wan is the master right now.
Jordan Peele is the master right now. Cinema
War. You are going down, Matt Kay. Elliott is going to have his hands full with that one, I tell you.
I think it's clear cut, but okay, Rye.
All right. It is a jam-packed jaw, so let's get it started with a Wes Anderson fact.
Yes, we're blurring the lines between fact and fiction today with this one. Royal Tannenbaums. Wes Anderson has admitted on the DVD commentary that it is partially inspired by his real life, which I think explains a lot about him, assuming his account is accurate. However, there are still a lot of differences that I think they probably just couldn't even say based on a true story. They were so different because they were big differences. There are still some small details that remain, such as the fact that Ethel Tannenbaum is an archaeologist, and so was Wes's mother. So it's like looking in. It's like a family photo of Wes Anderson when you watch that film.
It does explain a lot if the Royal Tenenbaums is even based 10% on Wes Anderson's life. It explains the quirkiness for sure.
It's got to be weird growing up with an archaeologist as your mom, trying to clean your room. It's just a different standard there, right? She comes in with a brush and starts dusting things.
I like it, Matt. I like it.
That was my archaeologist joke, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's about as good as archaeologist joke you can have.
Probably. It's up there.
All right, let's get this show rolling. Elliott Bambrough has been on the show numerous times. I'm going to throw this early on in the fish tank, Phil. I'm saying this is Elliott's 5th appearance on Cinemajaw. Maybe 5th. He is transitioning from Chicago's Best into a new project he might not be able to talk about yet. Elliott, welcome back to Cinemajaw.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good, man.
Doing well. It looks like you got some Halloween truck behind you. What am I seeing there on the Zoom?
It's the Boo Crew, which is some Halloween decorations and a nice small gourd stroke pumpkin on my other shoulder. Just trying to festive up the background to make it feel right. I mean, it was either that or just getting out a truckload of candy from downstairs by the front door and just piling that up behind me. But honestly, I wouldn't be talking. I'd just be shoving my face full of chocolate.
Well, we mentioned that you are a horror nut. So do you decorate quite well for Halloween? I see in the suburbs nowadays, it's like Christmas out there. These people are decorating so much.
I love going to the haunted houses. I love doing all the attractions. But right now, I mean, you're right. Those giant skeletons that came out, was it last Halloween during the pandemic, where everyone was getting their checks from the government when people weren't going out as much, and everyone was like, $185 for a 20-foot skeleton from Target. Yeah, I'll get one of those. And like every house in every suburban neighborhood has a fleet of these skeletons, like an old stop motion movie with gladiators in it, ready to roll up and like fight battles with demons. It's awesome.
Like Jason and the Argonauts.
But to answer your question, yeah, Jason, that's the one I was thinking of. But to answer your question, I don't decorate for Halloween because for me, Halloween is a year-round celebration. Halloween doesn't stop and start in October. It's a dedicated 12-month thing.
That's what I was mentioning. The service Shudder, which just specializes in horror films. I actually don't have this service, and I'm a movie guy. But I know I've seen you on Twitter mentioning certain movies on Shudder. You go with this every month of the year. You're watching horror.
It is a great service if you like horror, and it doesn't just have horror. There's some great other subgenres from horror as well. But there's some great thrillers on there. We just saw a movie the other night called Fried Barry, which is a real psychedelic movie out of South Africa where this guy gets abducted by aliens, and then some kind of alien being is put inside his body, and then it's kind of a very psychedelic, color, strange inducing nightmare of this alien returning to Earth and experiencing things through this old guy called Barry. So yes, Shudder has a great library of horror movies, but there's a bunch of other stuff on there. But if there are jawheads out there that love horror and are looking for something to extend their fancy and their love for horror, then definitely check out Shudder. It's a few dollars a month. It's like a coffee at Starbucks, and it's really great. There's so many great films on there. They've got classics like Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then a lot of indie house movies, and then everything in between.
What got you into horror?
I tell this story a lot, and I hate to put my dad on trial, but when I was about 8 years old, he recorded a movie one night when I think I was staying at a friend's house or something. He said, hey son, I've got this film for you I recorded. You should check it out. It's a great movie. I love it. 8 years old, and he recorded Alien, Ridley Scott's Alien, for me. And luckily, it was on a commercial channel with commercials in between, so I got like those 3-minute breaks to calm down. But I was scared for my life. I don't think I slept with a light off for about 2 or 3 weeks, but I was hooked. It did something. It switched something in me. And then, of course, growing up in the 90s when there's VHS stores and all the covers and all the videos where you picked with your eyes when you were a kid. So that's when I stumbled across people like Freddy Krueger, and then crazy movies with just bizarre front covers, like, some funny stuff like Revenge of the Killer Tomatoes, the trauma stuff, a whole different host of things. But that was my breakthrough into it, was my dad terrifying the living life out of me with Alien.
So I know this is a movie podcast, but what about television horror? Do you get into like American Horror Story or the Haunting of the Hill House? Do you get into some of those?
Yeah, we've been watching American Horror Story since the very first season. It's had a couple of duff seasons. I think the Witches, the Covenant season, and then the futuristic one when they were underground, for me didn't particularly hit home too well. This current season was good with the double feature, although the Alien half, which is, by the time this airs, I'm sure will be done because it airs tomorrow night, the final episode. But the first half with the semi kind of new age vampire via the pills was fun. But this second half with the Alien, the second half with the Alien, it's half split between black and white. In the 50s when the first alien spacecraft lands on Earth and all the cover-ups, and then the technology comes from it, has been a little bit too slow. But yeah, I loved Haunting of Hill House. I loved watching Midnight Mass, which was Flanagan's latest one. And then Blythe Manor was great as well. So yeah, I don't just stop at movies. All aspects of horror, whether it's shorts, anthology, any kind of horror, I'm all about it.
Did you ever get into horror comics at all?
I didn't really. That kind of just missed me, I think. I was never massive, huge fan of comics. There was a comic book in comic strip in the UK called 2000 AD, which had Judge Dredd inside of it. That's where that character comes from. That was one of the few comics I was super into. So I missed. Although I did get like a bunch of copies of Fangoria and stuff when it came out, because it was just one of those kind of cool things to have as a kid in your backpack. Was your beaten up, broken down sandwich squished to bits from your mom, and the latest copy of Fangoria in there too. So I always like that because I always loved the creature effects from Savini, people like that, all those kind of fun things. Again, which takes us back to the 90s that was going on in horror movies in the 90s.
You speak my language.
I love it. Elliott, Chicago's Best is coming to an end, or has come to an end. What do you got cooking? You got something in the fire going?
A bunch of different stuff. I mean, Chicago's Best was a lot of fun. I did that show for 8 years, ate my way across the state pretty much. All good things come to an end. And as much as I miss doing that, there's a ton of other things going on. I have a show in development right now, which is kind of under wraps because it's in development stage. Hoping something fun will come with that, and just a bunch of other different things going on, keeping busy and watch this space really for a lot of people. If all two of my fans, my mom and my real fan who are listening, I'm sure right now, both of you guys hold tight and I'll let you know what's going on.
I love it. Well, you're very active. I love following you on Twitter. For the jawheads that want to follow you on Twitter, where should they hit you up at there?
They should look out for E to the BAM, which is the letter E, THE, the number 2, BAM. So if you search those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 letters and a number in there, then you should find me.
Nice. And we'll put links.
And of course, you guys are awesome because after you've been on the show, you stay on the Follow Friday list for at least the next couple of months. So if people follow Cinemajaw, they'll find me on the Follow Friday list. Or you can block me from the Follow Friday list, whatever suits your fancy.
Are the Follow Friday things annoying? I always wonder if our guests find that helpful or annoying. Because sometimes people put me on their Follow Fridays and I'm like, oh, God, again.
But is that, Matt, is that from someone who you don't particularly like or respect? So it's like, you want to say, don't take me out of your Follow Friday mouth. That's disgusting. Wash your mouth out with soap. Or is it
be honest, it's just somebody I don't even know, and I don't know how I got on their Follow Friday list,
But maybe we should start treating Twitter and things like that as we would, a phone book or our phone lines. Like, please delete me from your address book. Like, take me off your follow Friday. I do not know you. I don't associate with you. Don't try and get off the back of me. Get more followers off the back of me. How dare you? I don't know. I don't know how it works, but I mean, it's nice, isn't it? It's like a peer acknowledgement that everyone who follows you should follow this other person. So I don't see it as a bad thing. It's always nice.
I agree.
Okay, good.
I agree.
Good.
So we're celebrating Wes Anderson month, and a lot of times we would ask this Keep, Destroy, Spielberg remake, but with Wes Anderson, it's just completely different because they're so uniquely Wes Anderson movies. So the question we've been going with this month is, if you get stuck on a deserted island and you can only bring one Wes Anderson film out of his entire filmography to watch, which one would you take with you?
Oh man, this is really tough because I love Wes Anderson. I love his work. It would be really easy if he was a musician, because I just say the greatest hits CD, because it would have everything on there. Oh my goodness. I mean, I love The Life Aquatic. You know, I love Grand Budapest, the Darjeeling Express, although everyone pans it, I'm a big fan of as well. Probably, oh my goodness. And then Moonrise Kingdom. And oh my God. Yeah.
Such great ones.
They're all so good. They're all so much fun. Even Bottle Rocket. What do I take? I probably would have to take the one with my personal favorite soundtrack, and it's just a ridiculously fun story, the cast and the characters. Life Aquatic, I think I would probably take, because if I'm stranded on an island, I would like to think that Bill Murray is turning up with his team of interns who don't have handguns to come and save me.
Yeah,
I love it. Well done, Elliott. That's a good stuff.
I tried.
I like it. So Elliott is sitting in on this entire jaw. He has his top 5 scariest movies of the 1990s picked out. Before we get there, Matt, you called it the most anticipated movie of the decade just a few minutes ago.
I stand by that.
Let's talk about Dune. Dune was pushed back a year due to COVID. Upsetting? Yes. But if it meant I would see it on the big screen instead of at home, I was happy. The time has finally come. Dune is in theaters, IMAXs, and on HBO Max. Can Denis Villeneuve deliver us a film that lives up to the hype, adapted from a book that many have said is unfilmable? Matt and I headed for the desert, avoiding sandworms, to see just how spicy this movie could be.
We are House Atreides. There is no call we do not answer. There is no faith that we betray.
Smile, Gurney.
I am smiling. The Emperor asks us to bring peace to Arrakis. House Atreides accepts!
I know you. There's something awakening in my mind.
You need to face your fears.
Come with me.
The David Lynch version of Dune that came out in 1984 was what I call a VHS movie for me. This is one we owned and would put on from time to time. I hated it. Granted, I was a little kid when my brother would throw the tape into the VHS player and hit play. I have not read the book, nor have I seen the mini series that came out in 2000. So this new version is my Dune, and I loved it. When you talk to people who have read the book, an adjective they use to describe it is dense. The story revolves around Paul, played by Timothée Chalamet, and his family, who are assigned by the Emperor to take care of the planet Arrakis, which is the only source of spice, a substance that extends human vitality and is critical for interstellar space travel. However, there is a race of native people on the planet known as the Furman. While on the planet, they are attacked by the former ruling party of Arrakis, the House of Harkonnen. While this is happening, we are wondering if Paul is the chosen one. You see, his mother, played by Rebecca Ferguson, is part of a sisterhood who wields advanced physical and mental abilities. She is hoping that Paul can be a super being wielding the power while also leading his house. There are epic battles, hypnotic visions, giant sandworms. I have to say, Villeneuve did an excellent job of explaining everything while still keeping it exciting. I had no trouble following along. The visuals here are breathtaking. The film looked gorgeous on the big screen, and I mean every single shot of it. I saw this in a Dolby Atmos theater, and my body could feel the bass as the ships took off and landed. Now, I mentioned Timothée Chalamet. His performance on point, nothing too over the top or praiseworthy. The supporting characters from Oscar Isaac, Jason Momoa, Javier Bardem pops up, Josh Brolin, all are excellent. But I have to say, I think it was Rebecca Ferguson, who plays his mom, that was the highlight of the whole bunch. The only area I felt Dune let me down, and this is not a knock on the filmmaking at all, it just doesn't have a climactic enough ending for part one. I sure hope we get part two and then some. I really love the world building they were able to pull off here. Matt, how did the spice go down for you?
Spicy, right? Okay, so let's talk about Dune. This is a summer blockbuster in reverse. Now, I was not able to go to the theater, so I watched it at home. And for those of you who are not able to get out to the theater, I want to tell you that the home experience was amazing. It was just a gorgeous, gorgeous movie. It starts out so exciting with all these ships landing and all this intrigue, both political and military. And, you find out about the economy and the players of this universe. And then right around the time you would expect a big climactic arc through the last half hour. And mind you, this is almost 2 hours and 40 minutes long, 2:38, I believe. To be fair, probably 8 of that is credits. But right around that time, there is a huge downshift, and there is nothing that even remotely comes close to some sort of climax. So all the excitement is right in the beginning. When this movie started, I was like, oh yeah, I am in. Beautiful. Everything I just mentioned, so intriguing. I'm like, oh man, this is the new Star Wars. I mean, I'm going to be hooked to this thing. And then, boy, is it kind of a slog to get to the end. 2:30. Come on, let's get this thing down to a tidy 2:15, maybe even 2 hours, especially for a part one. I mean, this is going to be a trilogy, right? The David Lynch movie suffered from being too long and complicated. So why not simplify things and make it nice and tight?
I know, but the David Lynch version it is all the whole entire book is tried to be told in the one movie of the David Lynch version. So here we have a 2 hour and 40-minute movie, and it's just part one. So it's definitely a little bit longer. And I think they need that clearly, because there's a lot to go over as far as the politics go.
Yeah. Listen, I had fun with the movie. It was cool. I hope they pick up the pace in the next installments. Otherwise, aside from that pacing issue, and there not really being any kind of thing that even resembles a climax, there's some pretty amazing things along the way. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. All the visuals and the concepts of the ships, everything was that excitement level of seeing. You mentioned it like, oh, this is the new Star Wars. It definitely had that vibe, like the way these ships that almost mimicked what kind of
dragonflies,
insect? Like a dragonfly. That's a good example. Yeah. They're like dragonflies. The
ornithopters. Yeah.
Fantastic. Obviously the sandworms,
we didn't see enough of them,
but they were always the highlight. But man, when it finally comes out and you really get to look at this thing again, I'm happy that you like the presentation at home, but seeing this on the big screen, that giant sandworm was just mind blowing.
Yeah, no, I'm sure the visuals cannot be argued with. This movie is gorgeous. Every frame of it, well crafted and just dripping with style. This movie has so much style. It's like Blade Runner in space. It's just absolutely unbelievable how pretty this movie is.
It really is. I saw a tweet, them talking about Zendaya, who I didn't mention in the review. She's on all of the red carpets and the big premieres with Timothée Chalamet, and I'm sure she's a big selling point with a lot of the younger crowd. But I was stunned how little she's actually in part one. I mean, she's more or less a vision that Timothée Chalamet has seen throughout, some of his dreams. And then we finally actually see her physically and with very few lines at the very tail end of the movie. So she really doesn't factor too much into part one. I was sort of shocked by that.
Yeah, me too. She's a bit player in this part one. Let's talk about this cast because it is deep as hell. We got just for people who are more familiar with the characters that these actors play. You got Polka Dot Man in there. You got Thanos in there. You got Drax the Destroyer in there. You got Aquaman. You got Poe Dameron. I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
The whole galaxy's involved. Yeah. I thought when Javier Bardem popped up, it was pretty interesting because I just didn't even know that he was in the film. The cast is that deep.
Right. No, that's exactly how I felt with Brolin. I was like, oh, Josh Brolin's in this? No way.
He actually has an interesting scene with Charlemagne where they're sparring.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they get to wear these shields.
Mm-hmm.
And then the shields do come up later. I really like the way they sort of portray how they work. They are shields, but you can get through the shield. And
it basically slows something down.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So when they're sparring, it works perfect because they're not going for a kill anyways. But when we then get to see these shields used in battle, we realize that it is very protective, but by no means 100% protective.
Right. It's more like body armor, right? Like if you get hit with a rifle, whether you're wearing body armor or not, you're probably going to get seriously injured, if not killed. So yeah, the shields were interesting. I went back and watched the trailer for the 1984 classic. I've also seen it, but it's been a minute. So the shields in the trailer, well, let's just say that visual effects have come a long way.
I don't even remember the shields in the original, to be honest. So
they were pretty blocky. They look like something out of Tron, but hey, it was 1984. So
another highlight here for me is Hans Zimmer's score. It's different than his last couple that he's done with Christopher Nolan. But wow, is it beautiful score. It was hauntingly beautiful.
It's aggressive at points too. It's not just like tonal background ambience. It really comes to the fore in a few scenes. The score, listen, I'm not the kind of guy who watches a movie and thinks, oh, this score is amazing. I kind of, if a score is less noticeable to me, usually that means it's a better score. Usually this one, holy crap, best score of the year, maybe handily. And it might win the Oscar for it. It was just fantastic.
It was amazing. The whole sound design in the film is incredible. There's a shot in there where there's like whispering voices going on.
Lots of those.
And in the theater, I mean, this sounded so crazy how good it was. It was like scary because these whispers were all around the entire theater. It was so cool.
That is cool. I had the Dolby turned on my computer and decent headphones on, and it sounded great. But one of the cool things about watching it from home, folks, is I couldn't understand what the whispers were saying. So I turned on closed captions and rewound a few seconds, and I got a little bit more out of the movie because the captions came up and it explained what the whispers were saying.
Oh, nice.
So that was, I mean, hey, for those of you who are watching this at home, go ahead and do that. It adds a little bit.
For sure. How about a jaw-dropping moment here, Matt K?
The jaw-dropping moment for me was the test. Lady Jessica, who is Timothée Chalamet, Paul's mom, as you mentioned, is part of this order, and her leader comes to the planet where they live, and she's a little miffed that Lady Jessica had a boy, and this was sort of a brash thing that she did. So she tests,
right, because it seems, I mean, it's not fully explained, but you get the gist that women are able to wield this power a lot easier than boys, right?
Right. So she tests him in a very unloving and violent way, and that the acting between the two characters in that scene was very good. Timothée Chalamet is amazing, isn't he? He's so easy to watch.
Yeah, he definitely has that charisma of an A-lister. You know, you can see he's going to be the next big thing if he's not already. He's definitely there. I love that scene. I got to go and highlight the actual sandworm, which I know you'd want to see more of him, Matt, but 2 times we get one attack where one of the ships is down and the sandworm is coming from a long way and they're in one of these ships. And this is Oscar Isaac, who plays his father, is piloting one of these ships that looks like a dragonfly.
That's a pilot.
Charlemagne's in the rescue mission. They're going to go in and try to get these guys out of the machine that is basically harvesting the spice, which is a whole, the way the machine looks is awesome. You know, it's just got a very unique look to it. And they go down there and people are watching these humongous sandworms come through the desert towards the ship. I thought that scene was incredible.
Yeah, that scene was probably the most exciting scene of the movie, because after that, just get ready for a slog.
I wouldn't say slog, but we do agree that it goes out unlike
on a whimper.
Yeah, on a whimper. It doesn't go out like the only film I can think that is this big in scope is Lord of the Rings, in the sense of like part 1 had a very good climactic ending, and then it went on to part 2. So that's the only thing I can compare it to. And it's just not there. It doesn't have that big action scene moment.
Right. It's more like The Hobbit,
where he needed to cut it, you know?
Yeah. It's more like The Hobbit in that way, that this is one book that they're turning into 3. And I just don't think they found the right note, the right beat to go out on this part 1. But man, it's just undeniable how awesome this movie is. So
yeah, and I mean, I don't want to think people don't think it leaves it off in an exciting way. I was very much like, man, I want part 2 and I want it right now, because it ends in a way like, oh yeah, I want to know what's going on. I wish it was coming out in another month or something. For sure. Part 2 is going to be a huge hit. Do you have a movie poster quote? I do. I went with a good one here. Dune, so immersive, I had sand in my ear when I left the theater. Yeah, that's good. Mine's a little harsh. Operatic, beautiful, well acted, and just as dull as the original. That is too harsh. Maybe a little too harsh. How many Jaws, Matt K? I'm giving this a solid 3 Jaws. It lacks a punch at the end, but it's a fun ride, man. I'm going extra half jaw, not a perfect 4, but I'm going 3.5 Jaws for Dune. I do recommend seeing it in the theater, even though Matt says the presentation at home is fine. I may watch it at home. I do want to watch this a second time. So it's very easy to just hit play on HBO Max and see it a second time. But if I have a couple of friends I know that want to go see it in the theater, I might tag along and actually see it a second time on the big screen. I may as well. That's probably in my future. There we go. Dune, 3 Jaws from Matt K, 3.5 from Rye, the movie guy. You guys have probably seen it. It's the big movie out there. So shoot us a tweet. Let us know what you think. We are at Cinemajaw, or you can always email us, feedback@cinemajaw.com. So I don't think Dune would make our top 5 scariest movies of even the 2010s, 2020s here, I should say.
Depends if you're allergic to sand.
Then, yes, absolutely. Or giant worms, you know?
Beetlejuice.
Yes.
Sorry.
But we are covering.
Don't say it 2 more times, though.
Our 1990 scariest movies, ending our horror 3-part marathon, Matt K. And Elliott, this was a difficult list. I saw you on Twitter earlier today saying that you had a tough time narrowing it down to 5. Did you lose sleep on this one?
You can't see because the screen's white out. But I've got a giant list. I've got a bunch of movies that I wanted to add to my top 5 that I couldn't. And just looking at the list would be enough to keep a horror enthusiast happy for at least a couple of years of watching material. It's really difficult. I don't know. The fact that the people had to sit through listening to me umming and ahhing about which one Wes Anderson movie to take. And you guys want me to pick 5 movies from 10 years of my life. It's impossible.
How many did you list? How many are on that list?
Do you the ones that didn't make it? There's probably about 30 movies here that I was changing order, reinserting, like thinking how it made me feel at the time. How do I feel about it now? Is it actually scary, or is it just because I adore it? You know, those kind of things. I was like weighing up. I'm the kind of guy that alphabet, puts into alphabetical order my cookbooks and my CD stacks. It's very, very, very OCD about these things.
This is good. This is why we have you on the show. We want that.
It's like therapy. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You're getting us started at number 5. Okay. Where do you go with this number?
Number 5 for me. I could have had 2 David Fincher entries into this top 5 because one, although it's not a horror movie, could easily sit in there. Number 5 for me is Alien 3. Circles back round to my first ever movie as a kid in horror, which was Alien. For me, 2 by Cameron is a work of art unto itself. The script is phenomenal. I adore it. But the third movie, with the little-known David Fincher, goes right back to basics with all this heartbreak before it even begins. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who might not have seen this Aliens, with what happens to Sigourney Weaver's character at the beginning of this movie. But it's stripped down, back to basics, Alien, one xenomorph, some great performances. Of course, Sigourney Weaver with her hair shaved off, and all these guys in this prison planet. Charles Dance and a great cast of characters, and a really terrifying movie with some gruesome kills, and a great David Fincher movie, I think.
I think Alien 3 gets a bum rap out there.
It does.
I agree with you. Yeah, it sure does. In fact, I bought it on digital cloud, and I thought, I haven't seen this in so long, and I wasn't expecting that much more because the bum rap that it gets. I rewatched it probably a year or 2 ago, shocked at how good it was. I'm not going to put it up there with Alien and Aliens, but it's a damn good entry into the series.
Yeah, it's a solid movie. If you haven't seen any of the other movies in the franchise, it really doesn't affect it too much. It stands alone by itself, but just how it tails off after that with the movie with Winona Ryder in it as the android. I mean, everything just falls apart after that. But I love that movie, and I thought, should have watched that and thought there's great things to come from this new director who I think he'd only directed music videos up until that point.
Yeah. Throw it in the fish tank, Phil. What had David Fincher directed before Aliens 3?
He certainly had some good movies in the 90s. All right, that swings it over to me. And, a thing we've been saying a lot, Elliott, about what makes it a scary movie is the time that you saw it, So I don't know if this movie holds up a lot. It's just my number 5, but it scared the shit out of me when I saw it in 1990. I was still pretty young. This is almost like an 80s holdover. And I think part of what makes it so scary is the cast. Although you got Kevin Bacon and Kiefer Sutherland, who had both done some darker movies, especially Kiefer Sutherland with Lost Boys and stuff. It was the addition of Julia Roberts that really threw me off with Flatliners. And it's the story of it scared the shit out of me. Joel Schumacher, about medical students who want to find out if they can cross the threshold of death and then come back. And what they find on the other side and what they bring back with them starts to haunt them and chase them and stuff like that. And they each have their own little nightmare to survive. I thought it was a good, almost like a horror anthology, because they each have their own little segment of the movie. And then it all comes together at the end. The remake, garbage. But the original Joel Schumacher Flatliners scared me. Even though it's more thriller.
I had the movie poster on my bedroom wall because, growing up and loving horror, Lost Boys is one of my favorite movies. So obviously Kiefer Sutherland's like one of my guys, and I'm following his career. And Oliver Platt's in that movie too, isn't he? I think Oliver Platt's in there. It's a great film. It's a fun concept. I don't know. Isn't there redemption at the end? Don't they solve the problems and fall back in love with people?
No, there's, that's another cool thing. Like there's like several of the characters don't find. William Baldwin's in there too.
There's a Baldwin in it. Of course, it's a 90s movie. There's a Baldwin in it.
Right. So his character doesn't find redemption. And I think Kiefer's character, that he keeps pushing and he becomes kind of the villain. But Julia Roberts, of course, gets a happy ending because she's Julia Roberts.
Right. She ends up making pizzas at Mystic Pizza.
Or marrying Richard Gere or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I have not seen Flatliners since sometime since in the 90s. I have seen it, but I mean, a long time. I've been wanting to know how it holds up, to be honest. I'd be interested in giving that a spin.
Yeah, I've seen it maybe about 10 years ago. It's been a while for me, too.
My number 5, probably more a thriller than straight up horror film. But I think if you guys have seen it, you'll agree this one can really be quite scary. And it's also a Kevin Bacon film here, Matt. It is 1999. Comes in right before the end of the decade. I'm going with Stir of Echoes. You guys like this one?
I do.
It's a good movie.
Scary.
Yeah.
Yes. This is another one. After doing the research, I thought, boy, it's been such a long time since I saw this movie. But I remember really being freaked out by this film. Kevin Bacon in it actually gets hypnotized. And with this, he actually starts to have visions of a girl who is missing in the town. And it's these visions that he has that's really the scary and creepy part of the movie, because he's seeing all this like vicious stuff that's happening to the girl. And he's actually able to solve this heinous crime that's going on in the town and where she's at in this basement. And all of that I don't know if I'm not going to maybe spoil something, because you had already mentioned David Fincher with Seven, where it's really a thriller, but it's in such a dark territory of a thriller. It becomes a horror film in a sense. And that's where I think Stir of Echoes lands. Agree?
Yeah. It's almost like a noir horror film, you know, which I think Fincher did touch on again. We maybe talk about that later. You're right, Rye. Stir of Echoes, it's creepy. It's got atmosphere.
And I think also, I think it doesn't get enough attention, and it doesn't get talked about nearly as much, because I think at that time, Kevin Bacon was doing a lot of other more genre-friendly, cinema-going friendly work. So that this was kind of like the throwaway, Kevin Bacon's doing a silly little horror movie. And I think that's why people don't necessarily talk about it as much. But it's definitely a classic, definitely up there. I think it's on my list too of nearly made it onto the top 5.
And it's a really good Kevin Bacon performance. I mean, it's definitely one of his stronger outings. So if you guys haven't seen Stir of Echoes, do check it out. It's my number 5. Into our 4s we go, Elliott.
I was about to say, this is unusual, because for the three of us, normally by now, we've at least got one crossover of someone else's list. But I guess as the further we go on, the more likelihood that is to happen. Number 4 for me, after a lot of umming and ahhing, I figured I'd stay close to home in Chicago, and a horror movie with like most of them do, have an underlying message, which gets lost on some people. But the gore count in this as well is truly splendid and magnificent to behold. We're talking about Jordan Peele, who's involved with the remake, was involved with the remake, and that's the original Candyman I'm talking about.
Strong one. Very strong pick.
Yeah. The original
Terrifying boogeyman. Yes. Yeah, the original Candyman I'm talking about. Yeah, obviously from the 90s.
Yeah, 1992 on my list as well. This is a film I just rewatched getting ready for the remake. It still scared me. I was still blown away with how good the original Candyman is.
The thing I think what makes Candyman. Go ahead, Elliott.
No. All I was going to say was it's always fun to go back to the 90s and see what Chicago used to look like, and of course, Cabrini Green was a huge part of that movie. Not just that and the redevelopment there, but just downtown areas, and just seeing how much things have changed in 30 years, which I know to a lot of people is a lifetime, but it's remarkable, like the completely different feeling of a city like Chicago back in the 90s, where it's made to look like super gritty and dirty and downtrodden and those kind of things. It's really impressive.
Yeah. One of the things I think that makes Candyman so scary and effective is the mirror thing, right? There's always an urban legend. You probably heard one when you were a kid, or some version of it, where you stare into a mirror and you say some name. Mirrors are creepy. You turn out the lights and stare into a mirror. To this day, as an adult, I won't do that. It freaks me out, And
is that why your hair looks the way it does?
One of the reasons. Yeah. I mean, am I alone? You guys would stare into a mirror and just turn out the lights and stare until...
I do it daily.
Really? That explains a lot.
I've said Candyman into a mirror many times, repetitively, and I don't have a problem with mirrors. Mirrors are another great horror trope, with the closing of the medicine cabinet and someone being there and that kind of thing. So mirrors are scary things.
That's what I'm saying. Yes. Agreed.
But Candyman.
Yes, great pick.
All right, I'm sticking with the year 1990. And this I guess was a miniseries technically, but it's all about
Tim
one
Curry.
of the greatest character actors of all time, Tim Curry, and his tremendous performance as Pennywise the dancing clown in It. And I don't care what you think about the remakes. If you enjoyed them, that's fine. They had their moments for sure, but the original miniseries It with Tim Curry as Pennywise scared the ever-living shit out of me. When he is in the sewer and he says, "You want a balloon, Georgie?" and that voice and everything, even though it's less gore, right? We don't see as much in the original. I think maybe that's got something to do with it too, because what you don't see, the things in your imagination are always much worse.
Tim Curry will always be Pennywise for me. I think if they could have taken his performance and CGI'd it and taken out Sarsgaard and put him in the new movies with Bill Hader's performance in the second half of the doubleheader, that would have been an incredible reboot of those movies or that miniseries. But I love that. I loved that 90s miniseries. It was so fun. I every now and then I watch it, I'll catch it on TV. It has that kind of glossy glow and Vaseline over the lens feel to it, like a 90s Lifetime movie. It really does. Some of the dialogue is really, really strained and it feels like one of those bots have written it for someone, a script to sound like a Stephen King movie. But yeah, you're right. Tim Curry's performance as Pennywise drives that movie from start to finish because he is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's my Pennywise too.
I remember having an older brother. He loved it, but I was so terrified of it. I had trouble watching it all the way through. It was that kind of scary. So big fan. I even like the remakes as well, but I agree with you. He's much more scarier than the new Pennywise. He's
a terrifying character. I mean, when I was a kid, I can appreciate that. I was scared of a scarecrow. There was a TV show in the UK called Wurzel Gummidge. It was a kid's show about a scarecrow who came to life in a field. And it starts off with him as an actual scarecrow with his arms out, scaring off all the birds. And then he just slowly cricks his neck and jumps down and starts walking around and going, "Oh!" And he's supposed to be a fun, lovely character. And he used to make me cry when I was a kid. I was terrified of him. So, I get you right. I mean, things like that can terrify a kid. It's a scary clown.
For sure.
Are we
Absolutely.
Are we going to number 3?
My number 4.
Sorry.
Huge name in horror throughout, but he really got his start here in the 90s. Guillermo del Toro. And I caught up with his first entry, 1994's Chronos. And I do want to talk about that. This is sort of a twofer, if you will. But my number 4 pick technically is 1997's Mimic. I went back and watched this one just recently and holds up really well. It's has what's her name in it? Marina. What's her name?
Mira Sorvino.
Yes,
Oh man,
Mira
had
Sorvino.
such a crush on her in the 90s. Yes.
Big actress at the time. And it's such a creepy concept. It's this idea that New York City is being overrun by cockroaches, and these scientists come up with a special bug. It has a name, and they create this bug to actually kill off all the cockroaches. And they believe that this bug that they have engineered is going to just die off itself. But instead, it mutates and grows and begins to mimic its prey, and that the prey that it is on now is humans. And you get some wonderful scenes in the subways of New York, which is scary right away. And once you get the lights going out in the subways and you get these giant creatures basically flying towards Mira Sorvino, I'm telling you, I had the willies for a week after watching this one. And like I say, the effects, Del Toro, it holds up. I really like this one.
Yeah.
Elliott, you a fan?
I love Mimic. I agree with you. I think it's fun. I love the way the subway scenes connect the movie, and then there's the big reveal that that's how he's using his way to get across town, and the fact that they've engineered this creature. It's also, I think there's a lot of people out there that don't realize how ingrained Guillermo del Toro was into so many movies through the 90s. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that he's part of Mimic. Chronos, of course, great movie. The Devil's Backbone, and another great 90s movie from Guillermo del Toro. It's a fun movie. I thought Mimic was a fun, like, thriller crossover horror movie with like sci-fi elements, and it kind of brings all those fun different genres together into something that's a fun, exciting and scary movie. It's great. I love the reveal of the monster and how it hides itself as well. That's another great part of the movie.
Really good. I agree. Really, really well done. And Chronos, I just caught up with finally because it's come up on Cinemajaw numerous times. I watched it just last week and loved it. And Chronos, the story of this old guy who finds this artifact that helps lead to basically eternal life. The coolest part is they're inside this little artifact is a small creature that needs human blood. And when they go inside that and they show this kind of like worm-like creature, he's just got a great vision for showing these things on the screen, and it completely like makes sense. And it sounds odd, but it's almost like beautiful horror in a way. He just has a vision.
He's great with like creatures and monsters and aliens and creatures. You know, Del Toro's just got an eye for that. You're right, Ryan.
Yep. That was my number 4, Mimic. And also check out Chronos. Into our 3s we go. Elliott.
It's definitely going to be on someone else's list, so I apologize, but I appreciate being the first one to go up onto the next level. The movie that spawned a whole new genre of shaky cam, nausea-inducing. My dogs right now are watching this movie for the first time and are terrified because they've been told to face the wall. It's the Blair Witch Project. Honestly, when I went to go and see this at the movies, there was that moment when you were watching it where you still weren't sure whether it was actually a movie, whether it actually was found footage, because it's like, we're going to see a movie, right? And then the disclaimer comes up. It's like, oh, so it's found footage. No, they're just saying that. And then the performance is coming, and the performances are so strong of these actors doing this naturalistic delivery where they're just talking to each other with the camera rolling. Everyone feels like it's just part of a documentary. And that's what builds it up to this point where you're waiting for something to happen at the end. That scene of the witch's house, the drop of the camera, there may not be a ton of scares, the noises in the night and the little, twigs and stuff wrapped up to scare people happen fleetingly. And their loss of sanity and being lost themselves in the woods is terrifying. But those last 5-10 minutes, are worth the other sick-inducing roller coaster ride of nausea from the camera work. And, obviously it did something because it made so much money and then spawned an entire shake. Although I know there are 80s shaky cam found footage movies, but they did not have nearly the impact that the Blair Witch Project did.
Yeah. It's a masterclass in 2 ways, right? Like, first of all, the marketing around that movie.
Oh, yeah.
If we ever did top 5 marketing, this would be my number 1, because I don't think anybody had ever done this. They went to like MTV and all these other things and started releasing clips. So they built up their own lore around the movie before. There were no trailers or anything like that. And this was in the 90s. It was, the internet was so brand new. You couldn't just Google and find out if something was BS or not. And the other thing that they did well, which we talked about earlier, is they didn't show you the scare. They used your imagination against you with the rustling of the tent. And who hasn't been on that camping trip when you hear the slightest little snap of a twig and you think it's Bigfoot. So yeah, that movie is top notch.
No doubt. Definitely one of, if not the scariest movie theater experience I've ever had. I've had great ones at home, but boy, seeing that in the theater was terrifying.
One other thing I was going to say, because we've already mentioned Mimic, we've mentioned Chronos, and a bunch of other movies. During the 90s, when horror was kind of getting its second wind from major production houses and major studios. These glossy kind of big, over-the-top, elaborate movies were being put out. And then you had this film right at the end of the 90s, which stripped everything down, was purely, made on a real small budget with a real tight crew and acting crew as well. And it reset a lot of things. I think it spawned a whole other different subgenre, obviously, but it was so impressive. You mentioned the marketing, which is genius, but the way that was put together, that someone took a chance on that, and that it came about was kind of incredible. The way I saw the horror genre going in the mainstream at that time.
It was really exciting. It absolutely was like a paradigm shift for the horror business, if you will. There's a before the Blair Witch Project and after. Sadly, they could never recapture that exactly again. And I don't know if you can. They caught lightning in a bottle in a time, the only time it was possible to do, because you can't make a Blair Witch Project today. I just don't know if it's possible.
Right. Yeah,
I agree.
There's plenty that have tried, with the Paranormal Activity movies. There's another series of movies that came a little close. There's a series of films called Hell House. There's a trilogy of those, and they're kind of fun, about a group of people who set up a new haunted house in an old abandoned hotel, which is supposed to be haunted. And that really works while they're documenting them putting together their haunted house. But yeah, nothing will ever touch that. You're right. They caught it in a bottle. They got it right at the right time, and they succeeded where so many other people have since failed.
Agreed.
True. All right, swinging it over to me. My next pick is a movie, again, I think could be considered a thriller, or even a noir, Ryan, a dark noir, horror noir. Jacob's Ladder with Tim Robbins. It's a sort of a psychedelic hellscape that this returning Vietnam vet goes through. He's trying to find out if the government was testing chemicals on him and his platoon. The more he contacts his old friends from the war, the more they tell him he needs to keep his mouth shut. So clearly he's onto something. There's a great character who's his chiropractor / guardian angel in it. It's a weird movie, but some of the imagery that flashes, like his hallucinations and stuff, really disturbed me. And this is another one from 1990. I didn't do this on purpose. I just think I was younger then, and that's why the movies scared me more. Jacob's Ladder is a really dark and disturbing movie that doesn't necessarily even end in a good place. And there's some pretty messed up imagery along the way. But it's a fun mystery to unravel at the same time. I
still have not caught up with this, and you've brought it up on Cinemajaw before, and I wrote it down in my journal to see. Just haven't seen it yet. But speaking of the imagery, just the poster or the thumbnail nowadays when you're going across the screen is that sort of like blurred image of his face.
Yeah.
And that even gets me. I'm like, oh boy, yes, exactly. Elliott's making it for us on the Zoom. Yeah, it's that image, and I'm like, oh man, this does look pretty good. So I think I could be a little creeped out by that.
One of the really disturbing things about it is normally in horror movies, a writer or director will give you that 2-minute grace period where you've just been scared and you get to relax and get your breath back. Jacob's Ladder, the in-between parts between his hallucinations and nightmares, the living, breathing, ordinary life is just as unsettling and just as uncomfortable and depressing and claustrophobic and paranoid as his hallucinations are. It's a blurred line, and that's what makes it this like nightmarish journey where you just can't escape what he's going through.
It's really good. And at the end, there's a bit of an openness to interpretation there. So it's a fun watch. You'd like it, Rye.
I am going to check it out. Eventually, I will definitely see it, Matt, for sure. Swings it over to my number 3. This is my deepest cut on my list. If there's one surprise here, it's this one. I don't know, Matt, if you've seen it. We've never talked about it on Cinemajaw before. This one also controversy on if it's technically a 90s movie. This movie was made in the mid 80s. Premiered at the Chicago International Film Festival in 1986, but then couldn't find distribution. And so it played a bunch of film festivals until the very end of that decade, 89, when Roger Ebert saw it, gave it a good review. Other people started talking about it, and it finally got distribution and came out in 1990. So I'm calling it a 1990 film.
I think I know what it is.
It was also the reason why it had getting distribution was the MPAA had labeled it X, a rating of an X, which at the time they didn't have NC-17, and they
Is
were
Michael
only
Rooker
doing
in
this, and Michael Rooker's in it. Yep.
Yeah, he is.
You guys know where I'm going with this.
I do.
Yeah, he stars as Henry. The name of the movie is called Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
I'm actually surprised you're picking this.
I'm proud of you,
I'll
Ryan.
tell you what. Thank you. It's demented. So I mean, coming from Elliott, this is good praise. So the reason why this would have gotten an X rating is because the idea of the film is there's no saving grace here. It's really going to put you into the mind of a serial killer, and there's really no hope. It just shows you what a disregard he has for human life. This guy kills like he's throwing away his wrappers from McDonald's. You know what I mean? He is with a woman, doesn't like her after he's done with the evening hanging out with her. He kills her. There's no motivation other than he just wants to kill. And he takes this guy under his wing. It's basically a girlfriend, brother, and they start to kill together, and they actually buy a video camera. And the most disturbing scene in the movie is them watching the videotape of them killing a family when this wife and husband that they're basically both murdering. Their teenage son comes home and they end up killing the teenager as well. This entire scene is so disturbing that I just had to look away from the TV because I was just grossed out. And it's not overly violent. It's just the attitude that the film has itself.
Yeah, it's bleak. It is absolutely bleak.
It's uncomfortable and disturbing, and it's difficult to wash away like a blood stain on a sofa from a serial killer. It sticks with you.
Well said.
It really does. And two other things to note on this film. It was shot in 16 millimeter. It gives you that 4:3 ratio, and it's very grainy. So I think that adds to the feel of the film because it feels like you shouldn't be watching this to begin with. And two, you were talking about, Elliott, seeing a city early on, and this is actually shot in Chicago. There's a great scene of him driving into Lower Wacker, and he commits one of the murders on Lower Wacker. But you do see actually very snippets. I live in Wicker Park. Of him around Milwaukee and North Avenue and Wicker Park. I just know the neighborhood so well that I can tell, I know where he's at, kind of deal. But
that makes it creepier.
For Chicagoans, there's a little extra in there to watch. It's streaming various sites for free on Peacock and Vudu, free with ads on various sites to be. So if you want to, if you have the guts, Jawheads, check it out. It's called Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
One more quick note on Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Before Michael Rooker had his which is kind of a late career renaissance, right? Now he's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and he's in the Suicide Squad. He's just huge, right?
And he was in The Walking Dead too.
Right. Walking Dead was probably what broke him out big. But prior to that, he had done Mallrats and not much else. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer back in the day was one of those tapes. You might not even be able to find it at the local video store. It was a dare watch that got passed around at Comic-Cons, and it was really difficult to find Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer in the 90s. Now it's like a trivial thing to find this movie, but it had a reputation that preceded it, and it was a creepy one to see back in the day.
Yeah, it probably, what you're saying is actually kept him from some work because people,
I don't know about that.
Maybe associated him so much with this film that it was like, well, he's the serial killer guy. Let's just leave him alone.
Could be, man. Could be.
Well, he's creepy in there. It's a creepy movie. Check it out, Jawheads. That was my number 3. Into our 2s we go, Elliott.
Number 2, this one left me very close to a number 2 when I went to go to the movies to go and see it. It's a film that sticks with you. It's grotesque, it's gruesome, it's claustrophobic, it's unsettling. It's got some wonderful performances and incredible cast. Event Horizon. I'm not not entirely sure what year it was released. I do remember it was in the 90s because I remember feeling very scared for the next 24 hours or 36 or so. It's a film that really traumatized me, and I'm a big horror fan by now. I'm used to everything. I'm used to aliens in space. I'm used to that kind of thing because of my background with my first foray into horror being Alien. But for some reason, people like to label this movie as Hellraiser in space, which is kind of very layman's terms and doesn't really reflect exactly what it does. But to give you an idea, that's kind of what it's like. It's gruesome. It's people being mutilated, people mutilating themselves, and there is no happy ending. It is depressing and scary as hell.
Yeah, you got Lawrence Fishburne in there, Sam Neill. You're right, great cast and creepy. I love when there's a sci-fi element that not like a sci-fi goofy element, but it's sort of rooted in some type of strange reality. And the Event Horizon is trying to create like an artificial black hole, and that's where this horror comes from. I love that element of it.
Sam, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've seen it. Sam Neill's trying to raise the dead, right? He lost somebody close to him.
Well, no, I think originally, so the Event Horizon is a ship that disappears a few years previously. Sam Neill either has crew members on it or he was part of the team that designed it and developed the Event Horizon and the machine in the center of it that powers its travel through space. So it gets a distress call. So they send him back with a crew to go and find out what happened. And then that's when everything kind of unravels. But yeah, I believe he's lost his wife and kid in the past. And that's how the ship and the power that's controlling the ship gets through to him to start off with. But yeah, his descent, which he does so well in another great movie in the 90s, Into the Mouth of Madness by John Carpenter, his descent from a regular guy into this complete nut job in Event Horizon is incredible. Oh, it's so good. He's terrifying.
I mean, some of the comparisons to Hellraiser though are fair. They even say there's a line that's shared.
We have such sights to show you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think there was the filmmakers, at least on some level, were aware of it. It was at least an homage.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I just don't want people to expect Pinhead to appear on out in space in the spacesuit.
Right. They did that movie too. They did an actual Hellraiser in space.
I wouldn't be surprised. They've done every kind of Hellraiser.
Yeah. If James Bond can go to space, Hellraiser can go to space.
Right.
Yes. All right. I guess that swings it to my number 2, which in all honesty was the Blair Witch Project. But we don't have to beat that one up. I have so many on my list. I'll just sub it out. And I'm going with some J-horror here. Oh. I'm going to throw in Ringu at number 2.
Still have not seen this one.
It's my number 1.
You never saw Ringu?
Wow, his number 1.
Okay, all right. You know what? All right, then
you keep it. This is your show. You keep that damn number 1. I'm sending you a VHS this weekend. You have to watch it. You have to watch it, and then I'll have someone call you up afterwards to see if you liked it.
Well, tell you what. I'll talk about it a little bit, and then we'll talk about it at greater length when we get to your number 1. Unless you want to throw out an audible at number 1, Elliott.
I can sub something else in. I've got a list of like 40 other movies here. You go for it.
Here's my question for you, Matt. Obviously, this is the film that Ring is the remake of.
Yes.
Did you see The Ring first and then go back and watch this?
Yeah. In all honesty, I did. I saw The Ring, the remake, I guess you want to call it, the American version of it first, and loved it so much. In all honesty, The Ring is like in my top 5 of horror movies of all time. Scary movie, only PG-13. Bonkers how scary it is. I went back and watched Ringu and loved it. I don't want to say I loved it more. I love it in a completely different way. It's way more about the atmosphere with Ringu. It doesn't resolve the way the American version does. It's just more about the tone, and which at first I honestly kind of felt frustrated by, because I wanted that detective story that the American version gives us. That's not what Ringu is about. And then as I came to appreciate Japanese horror movies and Japanese horror stories more, I went back and revisited Ringu and fell in love with it even deeper. It's different from The Ring.
Deeper down the well.
Deeper down the well.
And it also did for horror movies in the 90s what the Blair Witch did for shaky cam found footage. It opened up this whole appreciation for, it's not just Europe, it's not just America that makes great horror movies. The whole of the Asian market, the Korean horror market, the Japanese horror films, people started going back to the 80s and to the 70s and realizing that another culture had their own myths, their own legends, their own way of honoring the dead and showing them on screen. And that for me was another great culture shift in the 90s with horror movies.
Agree. Well said.
I got to check out the original. It's blind spot for me. I got to see that one. My number 2 was mentioned already. It is Candyman, 1992. Obviously, we have the remake out there that Jordan Peele has produced. Virginia Madsen is the star in the original. She plays Helen. Like I said, still scares the bejesus out of me. So do check that one out. I'm going to sub one in here since we got honorable mentions. I remember this actually being such a big hit in the 1990s. I don't know where you guys fall on this one, but how about Single White Female?
It was fun.
Yeah. It's okay.
It was a fun film.
Bridget Fonda, Jennifer Jason Leigh. Just by the title of the movie, you sort of get the gist. We're looking for a roommate here, but there's a jealousy factor. There's a dog that is purchased. There is a dog that is killed. And things get creepy. I remember this being way better than I ever thought it would have been. I think it's because of the 2 actresses in the leads. I mean, the movie probably, the plot and everything that goes into it isn't all that original or great. But Jennifer Jason Leigh and Bridget Fonda going toe-to-toe, I think they sort of made this movie work.
It's a class film. It really is.
It's definitely a genre buster, right? It did sort of set into motion a whole new category of horror with this stalker kind of vibe.
The hand that rocked the cradle. Was the hand that rocked the cradle after Single White Female, or was it before?
Throw it in the fish tank. They came out right next to each other.
They did? Because it was that similar kind of feel and vibe, right?
100%. Yeah. Hand that rocks the cradle before or after Single White Female.
And what about Pacific Heights as well, with Michael Keaton as the tenant who moves in to a young couple, newlywed? I think it's Matthew Modine and his wife, and they rent this nice guy an apartment, and he becomes the worst tenant in the world, and he starts ruining their life and pulling apart the house. That's another thriller as well. That's in that kind of same creepy stalkery, like you can't trust anyone you meet.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that one. It's been a while, but
yeah,
that's a good one.
All right, here it is. Our number ones. Elliot, what do you got replacing?
Replacing Ringu, I thought I would honor my honoring of J-horror and Asian horror. Ringu was the one that started it for me. So the next one I would have had after that for pure terror is Audition, a movie that starts off as a kind of comedy and a pretend opportunity for a guy to try and find his new girlfriend, ends up in one of the most macabre, disturbing. You want to talk about Henry, a portrait of a serial killer, inspiring people. The female character from Audition clearly studied Henry closely and said, I can do that, but I can do it 12 times more terrifying and really, really torture someone. It's a film that really kind of spans a whole different set of things. Like I mentioned, it's a romance, it's a comedy, and then it descends into this horrific body horror movie. And it's another great piece of Asian horror that needs to be seen to be believed, because I don't think that kind of movie could ever be done by a big studio in the US. No one would take that script and say, we've got this kind of couple falling in love, and then she tears into pieces. What do you think? No one would make that movie, but it could only be made by an Asian horror master, and it's terrific. You have to watch it.
I agree. That one is disturbing as well.
Audition at number 1. What do you got sitting there, Matt?
All right. I have one of the most underrated sequels of all time, and I honestly don't know why more people don't talk about this movie every day because it is a freaking masterpiece. Every day.
Holy cow.
1990. I don't know why. I swear to God, I didn't even plan this. The director is William Peter Blatty, and it stars George C. Scott. It is The Exorcist 3.
Loved it. Absolutely.
Matt loves this one.
It's really, really good. I mean, after The Heretic, the atrocity that The Heretic was as a follow-up to The Exorcist, to get Blatty back and the cast in that, Brad Dourif's in it as well.
Yes. He's so good in it.
Is he there? Is he not there? Is he the demon? Is he not? It is. And George C. Scott is as ever such an imposing figure. He's just a
presence.
Yeah, he's just there. He's just big and huge, but he's there, and you damn well know it. But I think it's a great film. I thoroughly enjoyed Exorcist 3.
Every once in a while, George C. Scott will just slap the hell out of the guy. I love it. The interviews that he does with the prisoner, and he's trying to figure out. I mean, I'll briefly give you the synopsis here. The Gemini killer is dead, but there's a killer on the loose who is basically a copycat. But there are some things that they kept from the press that this killer on the loose is actually doing. So the MOs match, and they've got a suspect in jail, but the killings continue. So it's a possession story. Some of the interviews he does get so disturbing. In fact, some of the dialogue, like, Elliot, do you remember the scene in the confession booth where you don't see who's confessing, but it's the voice of an old lady?
Yes.
And then she starts talking about how, she cut somebody's throat and there was just so much blood.
Yeah. I like that's so good because I remember her voice now. It's like, and I cut his throat and there's so much blood. I'm going to Eric Cartman there, but yeah. It's really creepy. I mean, again, it's the one you don't see thing. You can just hear her voice. It's like, oh no, the killer's right next to me.
But then it's also got one of the best classic horror jump scares, the nurse scene. Do you remember the hallway, the nurse? That's another one with the thing on the ceiling.
On the ceiling.
With the hedge clippers, the shears. And the nurse crosses the hallway after this long scene where she's going from room to room to room and nothing happens. Mm-hmm. Finally, you think you're off the hook and the horror, the tension is released. So you feel like, oh, okay, this was a red herring. It's not going to scare me. And then this thing crosses the frame with the hedge clipper going to chop her head off. Terrifying. This movie is so underrated. It's criminally underappreciated.
You're right, Matt. I don't know why people aren't talking about this movie every day.
Yeah,
every day.
I was on the red line. I was on the red line the other day, and I just saw two guys who didn't really know each other, and one just looked at the other one and said, "George C. Scott," and he said, "Yeah, It's a Wonderful Life." And I was like, "Oh, two more people connecting over The Exorcist 3. This is beautiful."
Exorcist 3. I'm just gonna make that like my ringtone.
Wow. He will never get away. His pain won't end.
Wake up to it every morning.
All right. Truth be told, my number one was, I believe Elliot had this at number 3, 1999's The Blair Witch Project. We talk about it a lot. Everything we can say about it has been said. If I'm filling one in, the only one that's, I think, an honorable to throw in at a number 1 that hasn't been mentioned would be The Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair.
It's a prestigious pick for a number 1, and granted, it has such a strong performance. Really, 2 great performances by Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. That a lot of times we don't look at the fact of just how scary the film is. But man, that scene still, when Anthony Hopkins' character, the way he escapes out of the cage, the prison that he's in, by basically taking the face off of one of the guards, is just, it's menacing. It's just wacky, and you don't see that in like a big screen kind of movie with like Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster, and then all of a sudden you get this gore where he's basically defaced somebody and put this guy's face on top of his. What the hell was going on? And the whole entire prison scene, when the very first time Jodie Foster is going down that hallway to talk to Hannibal Lecter and seeing all the guards and just that atmosphere that's created down there in the prison, that part creeps me out. The score of that movie, And of course, the ending in the dark with the night vision was literally incredible. So for all those reasons, it should be a number one.
It's a good movie. To say it's a good movie is a drastic understatement.
Let me do this the way Matt Kay should do it. People should be talking about this movie every single day.
Twice a day.
People do talk about Silence of the Lambs every day. People do, you know?
Well, I was just on the blue line and I saw one guy say,
"Hello, Clarice."
Honorable mentions here. Let's go rapid fire because Elliott's got a whole page list. Looking at my honorable mentions, they were actually, I had Event Horizon on there, Misery.
Yeah.
And while I don't think Scream, the original Scream, is all that scary of a movie, I actually thought the sequel, Scream 2, was scarier, but I think both those should be mentioned. I had a blast with Scream 2.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Scream 2 is great. And the original Scream, Wes Craven having a renaissance in the 90s and also poking fun at himself and everyone else who tried to take, he's one of the grandfathers of the slasher movie, the granddaddies of the slasher genre with Freddy. Taking that and then poking fun at himself and everyone else who's tried to, make a dime and a dollar off of the slasher genre. Like resetting that was fun as well. I love the Scream movies.
Yep, I do too. I'll go rapid fire. Yeah. Go ahead. Really quick. I have to say Dead Alive. Just want to say it. It's not the scariest movie, but it's got its thing going for it. 7. We didn't mention 7, you guys. Scary, David Fincher. And I'm just going to go ahead and say a guilty pleasure of mine, which is Dr. Giggles. Not that just scary. Leave it there. I like this movie. Elliott, back me up, maybe.
But you do you, dude.
Elliott, what do you got there?
I got a bunch of stuff that you guys mentioned. I had Flatliners, 7, a bunch of other things. I love Sam Raimi. So Army of Darkness. It's not gory. It's not terrifying, but it's a wonderful conclusion to a fun, slapstick comedy horror. I've got Scream on here. I've got Exorcist 3. I've got Nightbreed by Clive Barker. I've got From Dusk Till Dawn by Rodriguez. The Sixth Sense. I've got 7. I've got The Craft as well, which I thoroughly loved with the girls who are witches.
Elliott.
I've got The Faculty, which again, aliens coming down, taking over in the kind of Invasion of the Body Snatchers way, taking over a school faculty, killing a bunch of kids. I've got Freddy's Dead and A New Nightmare by Wes Craven. And I've also got Bram Stoker's Dracula, which was Coppola's wonderful foray into horror. Gary Oldman's performances as all the different versions of Dracula are incredible in that movie too.
No arguments.
I like to say at the end of these, like, hey, Jawheads, if we missed your pick for scariest movies, but we couldn't have. We named every horror
every movie from the 90s.
1990s.
Yeah, I mean, we even got to Dr. Giggles, for God's sake.
If you have Twitter pulled up and somehow we missed one, Jawheads, shoot us a tweet at Cinemajaw, or you can email us feedback@cinemajaw.com. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, Matt is taking Elliott on in famous actors who have appeared in horror movies, plus a cinema war looking at who is the most exciting horror director working today. We'll be right back on Cinemajaw. Stick with us. I have spoken many a times about my fondness for the Royal Tenenbaums, but the first time I saw it, I did not connect with it. A friend of mine, Will Allison, he deserves to be named. Will Allison told me, watch it again. Trust me, you will love it. And sure enough, he was right. As soon as Alec Baldwin's voice came on to narrate the opening, I was in love. Within that stellar 3-minute opening is this clip where Royal, Gene Hackman, attends his young daughter's play.
The 3 Tenenbaum children performed Margot's first play on the night of her 11th birthday. They had agreed to invite their father to the party.
What'd you think, Dad?
Didn't seem believable to me. Why are you wearing pajamas? Do you live here?
He has permission to sleep over. Well, did you at least think the characters were well developed?
What characters? There's a bunch of little kids there dressed up in animal costumes.
Good night, everyone.
Well, sweetie, don't be mad at me. That's just one man's opinion.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Hey Jawheads, Phil here. We know it's spooky month, but since it's also Wes Anderson month, we thought we'd give you a few films to celebrate with us. Some of the films that are on subscription streaming services are going to be The Life Aquatic, which is on Amazon Prime and Hoopla. Both Isle of Dogs and Fantastic Mr. Fox are on Disney+. Rushmore is on Hulu and Paramount+, and Moonrise Kingdom can be found on HBO Max.
And we are back on Cinemajaw, hanging out with Elliott Bambrough.
Elliott, I know that you mentioned earlier every day is Halloween for you, and I concur, but this is the one day of year we get to dress up and people won't stare at us like we're total freaks. Do you have a costume picked out for this Halloween?
I'm not a big costume guy. I hate to say it. I think I'm pretty terrifying as myself, with a face that only a mother could love. I've never really been a big costume guy. I don't know why. I don't know why I shy away from that. I think Halloween for me has always been. I love the parties and stuff. I don't need an excuse to go out and have fun and mingle with people and chat and drink good beer. But I'm a true movie dude. Halloween is like a 4 or 5 DVDs set by the side. I'm definitely going to watch Halloween. I'm definitely going to watch another classic. I'll pick a couple of movies I've never seen before. But I'm a stock full of popcorn and candy and movies, and I'll enjoy the kids in their outfits. I always love seeing the kids dressed up and what they're wearing, especially when these cute little voices come out of some kind of devil covered in blood, and they're like, trick or treat. I'm like, oh, it's the cutest little Satan I've ever seen in my life. Here you go.
That's
Have
awesome.
3 almond joys just to annoy Phil because he loves him so much.
Yeah, I have a fireplace, and I love my new tradition is having a fire, all the lights off, and a scary movie going. And I'm just so damn happy with that. So I'm with you, Elliott.
I'm going to be Ash Ketchum since nobody asked. We're all going to be Pokemon this year in my family.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I drew the Ash card. So
way to bring this podcast way down.
Phil's impressed.
Elliott doesn't even know what to say to this.
I mean, I'm always impressed with people wanting to get dressed up with their kids. There's nothing more upsetting than seeing someone going trick or treating and the adults aren't even wearing anything. I think that's like, if you're encouraging your kids to go and trick or treat, you should get into character too and dress up. So Matt, my hat off to you and your family for all going to Pokemon characters. I love that. What about apart from, I know Rye's staying in and watching movies. What's Phil doing? Did you get dressed up, Phil?
My costume is the non-dairy queen, celebrating my vegan lifestyle. It's really just a princess dress, and then I show up not eating meat. It's in my record of vegan Halloween costumes too, because 2 years ago I was vegan man Randy Savage, which I didn't realize I became that vegan, but I guess I officially am now.
Well, no almond joys for you, man. That's
no, but
chocolate.
They do make a non-dairy dilly bar.
I was going to say, isn't there gelatin in almond joys
and milk chocolate?
Oh, there's chocolate.
No, but milk.
Oh, well, milk. Yeah, I mean, if you're vegan, yeah, obviously you can't touch the milk. But man, Halloween.
I have not had an almond joy in quite many. Smarties and Skittles are still Phil approved. So.
Hey, they're good.
Oh, there you go.
Also, I can't really eat candy anymore. Like my stomach will be far too angry for me. So that's why Halloween sucks. Even if my diet didn't even if my diet allowed me to, my body would say, "Get the hell out of here! You're not 20 years old anymore."
Jeez, Phil. Thought I brought it down with my Pokemon outfit.
Yeah.
Phil's like, I don't even like candy.
I love candy. That's
We're
the problem.
celebrating Halloween here. Come on. Elliott, again, for the jawheads that want to follow you on Twitter, what's the handle?
E to the BAM, the letter E, the number 2, THEBAM, E to the BAM.
Like it. Do it, jawheads.
Yes.
Before we get to Cinema War and before we get to trivia, we threw a few items into the fish tank. And let's get those almond joys out of the fish tank. Let's open her up.
Wait a moment! It's fish! Isn't it?
DC! Wake up! Wake up!
out. Who's coming with me besides Flipper? Here.
That's a Sicilian message. It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Thank you. Every week, this is a little known fact, but Matt also, in addition to filtering out the water in here, he also has to, like a guy at the movies with a little broom, get all the wrappers and my Almond Joys out of here. So our first one, this is an easy one. It was how many times has Elliott been on the show? What did you say, Ryan?
I said 5 times. I thought this was his 5th appearance.
So, yes, this is the 5th time. I wasn't sure if you said 5 times prior and this was the 6th or if this was the 5th, but there's been 4 before it. This marks his 3rd Halloween celebration with us. Officially, before it was 2 horror episodes and then 2 just regular any other month episodes. And it was tied, but now Elliott is officially in the Cinemajaw canon, more horror than anything else, which is, it feels right. It feels correct now.
Do I get, is there any official, Jaw, collectible memorabilia that I get for a certain amount of episodes?
We're trying to get a jacket. We're trying to get a jacket.
I own a tattoo gun, so it depends on how permanent you want things to be.
Yeah, I'm ready to go for another tattoo. That would be kind of cool. I could add to my collection.
It's just the Cinemajaw logo, but with fangs instead of the Jaws.
I love that.
Or Jaws. Jaws is a scary movie too. So
yeah, that's true.
Here, what was David Fincher doing before Alien 3? So no, we were kind of discussing it like music videos and stuff, but no big screen anything. But he was still working on major movies. I had no idea that he was doing, but he was doing like camera work and like DP and different kind of like photography jobs on a lot of other movies, some really big ones. So he was on Return of the Jedi, Temple of Doom, Never-Ending Story, like a lot of films that I think really make sense, like, and are also visual masterpieces in a lot of their own rights.
No doubt about it.
Then our last one, which one of these came out first? The Hand That Rocks the Cradle or Single White Female? What were everybody's answers?
I say
very, very close.
I say Rock the Cradle came first.
Yeah, that would probably be my guess as well, but I'm not sure.
I'm gonna guess it was Single White Female first, and then Hand That Rocked the Cradle about 4.5 months later.
So they were both the same year, within less than a year, both in 1992. Hand That Rocks the Cradle was January 10th, 1992, and then Single White Female was August, but very, very close. Literally, if you just did a cursory glance and you only saw the years, you would have no way of knowing. I literally, normally for this kind of question, I just look up the year, and then it got to the point where I was like, well, shit, I
need
have to now look up. Yeah, I have to go onto the actual Wikipedia page.
All right, was that everything, Phil?
That's all we got.
Phil has, he's earned his vegan chocolate for the night.
Matt, it brings us to a segment called
Cinema War.
And the war, it works like this. Me and Matt, we're fighting on a topic. Our guest, Elliott, gets to play judge and jury and tell the jawheads who he thinks won this argument. We're talking horror directors. Phil, what are we talking?
Boo. Did I scare you guys? I know what you're thinking. Phil, you are a modern-day Hitchcock, and that is 100% correct, but that's not what we're talking about this week. It's time we talk about James Wan and Jordan Peele. The two filmmakers are the biggest players in horror right now, but only one of them is going to leave here alive. Ryan's hoping to conjure a win for James Wan, and Matt's telling him to get out. Jordan Peele is the most exciting horror director of our days. Let this ghoulishly frightening cinema war begin.
Matt, James Wan is not only the current face of horror, but he deserves to be included when discussing the great horror directors of all time. I'm putting him in that category. He is responsible for the biggest horror franchises of the new century. Jordan Peele has some time to go to match him here.
Ryan, Jordan Peele's 2017 directorial debut, Get Out, was a critical and box office success and got him the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, along with nominations for Best Picture and Best Director. James Wan gave us Saw. I mean, Saw was good, but it doesn't have any Oscars.
However, Matt, Jordan Peele had the chance to do something great when he put his name on the reboot of The Twilight Zone. However, it appeared on something called Paramount Plus and fell completely flat. How do you screw that up? We are hungry for it after Black Mirror took over Netflix, and yet Jordan Peele disappointed.
We're talking movies here, Ryan. Next year, Jordan Peele is giving us yet another original horror story with his new film, Nope. And I am as excited as hell. James Wan is going to produce, not even direct, yet another Insidious or Conjuring verse or Saw sequel. And who cares? I'm just not as excited for Wan's work. Nobody is.
Who cares? What are you talking about? Most directors would be happy with one big franchise to hang their hat on. James Wan started numerous ones. He started Saw, Insidious, The Conjuring. Those are major franchises, and he started them all. There's no arguing his brilliance here.
McDonald's is also a major franchise. Ryan, we've said it here many times. The thing that elevates great horror over good horror is social subtext. Romero's zombie films all had something to say about society, and Jordan Peele is the new Romero, the new Rod Serling. James Wan just isn't saying as much with his films.
Well, you were giving him a problem about not being original. James Wan gave us Malignant this year. He's still giving us horror, even after venturing out and doing superhero films and action films. But more importantly, he took a chance on giving us something fresh. He could jump back and just direct another Saw movie, but instead he took the harder path. He is the current king of horror. Jordan Peele will have to wait a few years to get on this throne.
Malignant was good, but it's not as exciting as Nope or Get Out or Us. Sequels, reboots, franchises, and cinematic universes, these are the fare of James Wan. While Peele may not be perfect, at least the guy always swings for the fences and gives us something bold. And isn't that what excitement is, Ryan?
Whew. We are button heads here on Cinema War. We throw it to our judge, our jury. Elliott, what did you think of this Cinema War?
This is a real tough one because you are talking two completely different directions, two completely different philosophies. You've got Wan, who, as you guys mentioned, Saw franchise, Conjuring franchise, admittedly, and Insidious, sorry, and everything else in between. The problem I have with Wan is he starts off well with all those franchises, and then it just feels like a really bad carbon copy of the same movie with a different title. I love Jordan Peele. I love him for so many different reasons. I love his movies that he's been doing. I love the reboots of things like The Twilight Zone, although that's not movies we're talking about. But I also love him in Keanu because it's a really cute movie about Cat. There are so many different pros and cons for both. I think you have to boil it down to the longevity and the fact that Wan has built up an empire and has his corner of the horror market, whereas Peele is still kind of a Padawan and a student of the game. As much as I hate to say it, because this guy who's going to win it deserves a slapping, especially for Malignant, you have to hand it to Wan because he is a master of the genre. Peele is close, though. He needs another few years, and then he will officially be a master of the genre himself, but you have to hand it to Wan. The man knows how to pump out a movie. The man knows how to set up a scare, and he's actually like redefined how to produce the scare, and people mimic him. And that's the biggest compliment that you can give Wan is other people are trying to be the next one.
No doubt. I tip my hat.
Yeah. And to be honest, I mean, when we put down the Cinema War and we go and take our notes, I looked at it and I thought, same exact thing that basically Elliott just said. I thought probably Jordan Peele in a few years, you could really make a good case for this. But just looking at the body of work that Wan has, I mean, right now he's sort of the it guy as far as it goes, the way I see it. So my 30 seconds, I'm not going to go really anywhere other than I was thinking of streaming services. I know you mentioned Shudder. We talk a lot about Hoopla and the streaming services from the public library. They have a lot of great horror movies on there. That's where I go. Since I don't have Shudder, I'll go to some of these other ones. And also Peacock, free with ads. I watched a movie. They did 2 minutes ads in the beginning, and then they said your movie will run uninterrupted. Fine by me. So there's some other options out there to see some older horror that is free, basically. So
there's some great short films on YouTube as well. Like you can find some cool horror host YouTube channals. So dig.
Agreed.
Netflix has a great array of original horror content and some other stuff as well. Amazon as well have a partnership with Blumhouse, and they have some direct from Blumhouse to Amazon movies that you can't find on any other streaming services. So just like when cable used to be king back in the day, you have to have every single streaming service to watch anything.
Except you don't need Paramount Plus, right? We can mix that one.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess so.
All right. As I mentioned at the top, a lot of famous actors appear early on in their careers in horror films, and that is our topic for trivia this week. Elliott, you're our guest. You get to choose if you want to go first. Let Matt go first. There are steals, and if you get hung up on any questions, you get one rescue me, Ryan. They start off easy, Elliott.
Do we have any kind of equations or mathematical analysis on whether it's better to go first or second?
We do. We've run the numbers, haven't we, Phil? What do those come out to?
Always go first. Always go first.
Okay, then. I am a guest, and I feel very, very gracious. And Matt, I already beat him down with his Jordan Peele thing, so I'm going to let him go second. That was a nice way of me saying I want to get the odds in my favor.
I love it. That was good. So this question is over to Elliott. Question number 1. Here you go, Elliott. Johnny Depp famously made his big screen debut in this horror film.
A Nightmare on Elm Street.
There we go. He's on the board, 1-0. Another softball over to Matt K. Maybe not, though. I don't know how well he knows this fact. The original Friday the 13th saw this actor play a camp counselor. He would later go on to star in the 2020 horror film You Should Have Left.
That gives it away. Yeah, it gives it away.
I knew it was Kevin Bacon. I don't even know if I've seen that second movie. What was it called?
No, you definitely haven't. You Should Have Left, which I recommend slightly.
It's a good premise. It's a good film, a good premise, but it falls flat at the end.
1-1. Question 3, back over to Elliott. The ageless wonder Paul Rudd starred in horror the same year as Clueless, 1995. He starred in this horror film.
It is Halloween 1, 2, 3, not 4. Same year as Clueless. Halloween 5? Halloween 5?
Final answer?
I don't know. Oh, obviously not then. Whichever other odd number Halloween movie I should have picked. Was it 4?
Incorrect. Matt, you got a chance for a steal and to take the lead here.
Isn't it just called Halloween, The Revenge of Michael Myers?
It's The Curse of Michael Myers.
Not giving you that one, Matt. It was Halloween 6, Curse of Michael Myers. Also, a lot of times just called Halloween, Curse of Michael Myers.
Also just called Why Did We Bother?
It is still 1-1. Question 4 over to Matt K. Matt, the original Leprechaun movie, 1993, saw this actress appear in it.
Oh my God.
Years before she became an A-lister.
1993?
Yeah, 1993. Big A-list star was in Leprechaun.
Why do I think it was? No, it's not her. Crap. This is one I think Elliott will know. Drew Barrymore. I got nothing.
Oof. Incorrect. Elliott, you got a chance for a steal.
Jennifer Aniston.
That is correct. Jennifer Aniston was in Leprechaun. Yes. Elliott, 2-1, and question 5 is over to him. Elliott, before this actor was seen in his small roles in the Thor films and Suicide Squad, he played Detective Wynn in the 2008 remake of Prom Night. Before he was seen in small roles in the Thor films and was in Suicide Squad, he played Detective Wynn in the 2008 remake of Prom Night.
I haven't seen the Thor movies, so that doesn't give me a clue. Which Suicide Squad movie is he in? Is he in the terrible one or the one they just remade that was awesome? You can't tell me, can you? Okay, he was in the one that was awesome. That still doesn't help me because I've not seen the Thor movies. He played a detective in what film, sorry?
The remake of Prom Night, 2008.
Oh, I love the original with Jamie Lee Curtis so much. I'm not going to hold everyone up. I have absolutely zero idea. This is terrible.
Matt, you got a chance for a steal and to tie it up.
The only actor I can think of that had a role in Thor and Suicide Squad off the top of my head is Taika Waititi. So that's my guess.
Incorrect. We were looking for Idris Elba.
Idris Elba?
Yes.
Who is he in the Thor movie?
He's the guard of the
yeah.
area, whatever that
The
road
Rainbow
is called.
Bridge, yeah.
Rainbow Bridge, yeah. All right. It is still 2-1, Elliott. Question 6 is over to Matt K. Matt, name the A-list actress who appears in the 2002 masterpiece film 8-Legged Freaks.
The A-list actress?
Yes, A-list actress who starred in 8-Legged Freaks.
It's I love 8-Legged Freaks. I own the DVD.
Oh my god!
It's
of course he does.
David Arquette as the cop, and who is the love interest? Oh my god, this one's really gonna burn. Rescue me, Ryan. I need to get this one right. I like it.
Wow.
Like it. Yeah.
She appears in the Marvel films.
Really? That's all
you
clue?
got.
There's only like
Marvel.
two,
There's
Matt.
26
No,
films.
there's not. There's like 2 movies. There's 2 movies in the Marvel universe. Figure it out. 20 seconds.
That's like saying she's in other movies as well.
She has hair. She's an actress. She reads
and she was
scripts
in
for a living.
8-Legged Freaks.
So which okay, so I'm going to go Gwyneth Paltrow.
That is incorrect. Elliott, you got to guess here. I don't even know if the Marvel clue helps you because you're not a Marvel fan.
It really doesn't help me that much at all. She's in Marvel movies and she was in 8-Legged Freaks. Anthony Hopkins. He looks good in the wig.
We're looking for Scarlett Johansson.
Oh, man.
You overthought it, Matt K. Scarlett Johansson is in 8-Legged Freaks.
Still a terrible clue. Could you give me like a Ghost World clue or something?
All right. It's still 2-1. Question 7 over to Matt K. Sorry. Question 7 over to Elliott. Elliott, back in 1992, Buffy the Vampire Slayer was released, the movie. Name the 2-time Oscar-winning actress who appears in said film.
Oh, 2 times Oscar winner. Geez, I never saw this film.
You do have a rescue.
Oh, do I? Oh, cool. Right, rescue me, please.
Yes, rescue me, Ryan. Question number 7. She won one of her Oscars for playing a boxer.
There's only one person I can think of who was a boxer in a movie. And oh my goodness, why is her name escaping me at this very second?
See, now that's a good clue. That is a very specifically great clue.
That's a super awesome clue. It's a super awesome clue if you remember the name of the actress. Otherwise, it's like it's completely helpless. Oh my goodness, why can't I see her picture in my head and I can see her laying down on the canvas and oh my goodness, she's going to be fine after this fight, I'm sure. Oh, come on, what's her name? Oh my no. Oh, screw it. Okay, Matt, go
Torture.
on. Go on. You can. Yeah.
Torture.
Karate Kid 3. Hilary Swank.
Hilary Swank.
Hilary Swank.
Damn you.
Wow. Ties it up 2-2. What a switch of momentum we have here because the last question is over to Matt K. Matt, speaking of 2-time Oscar winners, Renee Zellweger starred in this 1995 horror reboot. Name it.
Whenever I hear Renee Zellweger in horror, I think of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I'm guessing that's probably not it. 1990 what?
1995 horror reboot.
Yeah, it's got to be that. Okay, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
We'll give that to you. It is, Matt. It is. You were about to overthink it.
Yeah, and Matthew McConaughey stars alongside her. I mean, yeah. Brian, that's a number 1. Honestly, that's not a number 8 question.
I've never seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot. I thought maybe I'd squeeze one in there.
It's not necessarily even a reboot. It's a paltry sequel. It's pretty bad.
Well, Matt wins this one. Elliott gave it away by not getting Hilary Swank with a clue as a boxer too. Can I get a handshake here, guys?
Yeah. I couldn't remember her name. It escaped me when I needed it most. It's embarrassing.
If it came down to a tie, we call it a jawbreaker. This question would have been over to Elliott. Elliott, which horror franchise deserves to die first? The Saw franchise or the Halloween franchise?
Is this just an opinion thing?
This is the jawbreaker.
The jawbreaker? Which deserves to die first? Man, there have been some terrible sequels of both. How many good Saw movies are there? One, yeah, the Saw series needs to die first.
Yeah, I think so. As much as I dislike the latest Halloween, your take on that really quick, Elliott. We were not fans of Halloween Kills.
I have not seen it yet. I'm holding out because I'm working through a bunch of other horror movies first before I get to it, but I've seen nothing but bad reviews, and I heard your guys' review of it. So I'm even less excited about watching how bad it is and how the siege mentality and the mob mentality works out, and the fact that my leading lady is in a hospital bed for the entire portion of the movie and doesn't do anything. What's the point?
Not fun. Yeah. It is not fun. The real jawbreaker was this: age of Idris Elba closest to. Matt, you got a guess on Idris Elba?
I'd say he's in his mid-50s. He was in that movie Concrete Cowboy. He's like an elder. Let's say 53.
Lock him in at 53. Elliott, you got a guess on Idris?
I think he's a little bit older than that. I might go 56.
49 for Idris Elba. 49.
He plays older, though.
I just, if you're listening, I just want to say that you look great for 49. We're big fans. Thank you. He's only 49?
49, yep.
Wow. He was in The Wire as well, wasn't he?
He was, absolutely.
And Luther, of course.
He's big. He's on a roll. Yeah.
He is, absolutely. Brings us to the end of a very fun and entertaining Jaw. First and foremost, we got to thank our guest, Elliott Bambrough. Thanks for coming back on Cinemajaw.
Guys, it's always a pleasure. I love talking movie with you two because it's the three of you. I'm so sorry, Phil. It's because I thought in the bottom of my screen I was watching Isle of Dogs, and I wasn't too sure if you were part of the conversation. But seriously, thank you, guys. I love talking movies, and especially with you guys. You make it so much fun, and it's always fun to jump into the Jaw universe.
Awesome. Love having you on.
Yeah.
Yep. We also got to thank our engineer, our producer, our editor, all the way from the Isle of Dogs, Fill Me in Phil.
Oh, of course. It's the best night of the week, guys. Wouldn't be anywhere else.
Matt, we should also thank the sponsors.
Yes, we should. Thank you to Overcast and to the Chicago Podcast Co-op, who help us get good sponsors like them.
If you want to support Cinemajaw, leave us a review, please, wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Yeah, and while you're at it, please click subscribe. One extra button from you helps us out tremendously.
Until next week, I'm Rye, the movie guy.
I'm Matt Kay.
And keep on jawing about the movies.